Today on Monson Made This, I am going to be making 3 spring-inspired brunch appetizers. For these 3 spring-inspired brunch appetizers, which you could serve at any time, doesn't just have to be a brunch, I'm going to be using a base of a cashew cream cheese. And I've actually made that ahead of time, which is right here. I basically put soaked cashews in a food processor with a little bit of nutritional yeast, a little bit of salt, and a couple of capsules of probiotic. Let it sit on the counter overnight after it was all blended together, and that's what we have here today. So all 3 of the dishes will pretty much be based off of this. So I'm gonna set this aside and let's prepare the first appetizer. The first dish we're going to make is an asparagus tart, and to begin we need a sheet of puff pastry. This has been thawing overnight in my fridge. I'm only gonna be making 1 today, so I'm only gonna be using 1 sheet, but obviously if you're serving more people, you would probably want to double this recipe and use both sheets. First thing I wanna do is roll this out just a little bit. I want this to be more rectangular than square. And if you notice, I'm doing this on parchment paper on top of a pizza peel. That's because I'm actually gonna be cooking this on my pizza stone. If you don't have a pizza stone or you don't have parchment paper, you can definitely just do this on a baking sheet with Silpat, but you want something underneath it that's not going to let it stick to whatever surface you're cooking it on. So I'm just gonna roll this out a little bit. I should probably be using flour to prevent a little bit of sticking, but trying to do this in a little bit of a hurry. And I have one of my asparagus spears here because I want to make sure that I have enough to fit a bunch of asparagus spears this way and also leave a bit of a crust. So just going to thin this out a little bit more. Again, use flour, it'll probably be better for you to prevent sticking. But I've already committed to this without flour, so. All right, so that's about as long as I can get it on this pizza peel. And the next thing I want to do is I want to create a bit of a border. So I'm going to just cut a line, not all the way through, just kind of scoring it all around the pastry. This is because the edges are gonna puff up a little bit and the center is going to stay down with the ingredients in it. All right, it's gonna be a bit rustic, and I like that. For the center, I'm going to just pierce it with my fork. This is gonna prevent the center from rising. All right, my oven is preheated to 400 degrees, and I'm just going to place this in here, or excuse me, I'm gonna place it in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes. So I just want to get this started baking. I don't want it to get fully brown, but I do want it to get a light golden brown and start to puff up before I add the cheese sauce and the asparagus. So I'll start checking it at 10 minutes. So this cashew cream cheese mixture here is kind of bland. It does have a bit of nutritional yeast and some salt in it, but for the dishes that I'm making, I do want to season it up a little bit more. So I'm going to add a bit more salt to taste, some black pepper, I have some fresh chopped parsley, and finally some garlic powder. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it here. I'll taste it and see how it is. But the idea here is that I'm gonna be making all 3 of these dishes with the same base. Obviously you wouldn't necessarily be making these all at the same time. So one of these would probably work for a full recipe or a full batch of this or of these dishes for your guests. My cream cheese mixture is seasoned, tastes good, not too seasoned. I don't want it too salty because of the other ingredients I'll be adding. I don't want the whole dish to just be blown out. So what I'm gonna show you how to make next are these grape truffles. Super easy to make, and it's only really 3 ingredients. So let's do it. Super easy to assemble here. Just take a red seedless grape or green, and you want maybe just between a teaspoon to a tablespoon of the cheese mixture. and you want to, as best you can, wrap the cheese mixture around the grape. It's a lot easier if your cheese mixture is chilled. Mine's still at room temperature. And you just want to coat the grape and then drop it in your pistachio. My puff pastry has been in the oven for about 13 minutes. I'm just going to be taking it out. As you can see, it's just slightly brown, not at all darkened brown at all. So I'm just going to set this aside while I finish my truffles. It's easiest if you make a few of these and then kind of roll them in the nuts or whatever it is that you're going to be rolling them in at the very end, just so that your hands can clean up. So to just show you how to make these and to conserve a bit of the cheese, I've only made 6 of these, but you probably want to portion maybe about 3 or 4 per person. I promise they are so good. People are just going to be popping them in their mouths, and so you want to make sure you have enough to go around. So that's it for this dish. Pretty simple, 3 ingredients, so good. Now let's assemble our tart. The asparagus tart is going to take about 1 pound of asparagus, and to trim your asparagus, you just kind of want to break it where it wants to be broken. So lightly bend it, and you'll see that it'll snap in the spot where it wants to be broken. Now, if you want to make this process go a little bit easier, yeah, some of them are smaller. You can kind of do a few of them, judge and see where they are, and slice them all, but I kind of like the idea of snapping them individually. My asparagus is all trimmed, so let's start assembling the tart. This batch of cream cheese here will probably be good for 2 sheets of puff pastry dough. Again, I'm using this for 3 recipes here, so I'm going to use only about half of it. With this, you can lightly press down the center, trying to keep the outer edges secure, and then just go ahead and spread as easily as you can your seasoned cashew cream cheese. There will be some crumbs, it's okay. If you wanted to, if you weren't using this for other applications at the same time, maybe thin it out a little bit, it would help the spreading go a little bit easier. It's up to you how you would like to design this. I'm going from top to bottom, just alternating which direction they go, just to add a bit of a design. Now I'm just going back through and filling in some spaces. I have a little bit extra left over, so. Last step is I'm just going to put a bit of olive oil. This is optional, over the top. A bit of salt, just to help season up the asparagus. And lastly, some fresh cracked black pepper. This is going to go back in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes till everything is nice and golden brown and the asparagus spears are starting to brown up a little bit and they've softened up. For the third and final appetizer today, I'm going to be making jalapeno poppers with shiitake bacon. So let's get started on those. In addition to making my cream cheese last night, I also prepared some shiitake bacon. These were dried shiitake mushrooms that I soaked in actually a recipe that I got from Lauren Toyota's cookbook for shiitake bacon. I just added a bit more water because of the dried mushrooms. So I'm just slicing these up into little strips. And these are gonna go on top of the poppers and they will crisp up and cook along with the poppers. So I'm just gonna slice these into little strips, set these aside. For the jalapenos, you want to slice them each in half, trying your best to keep the stems still intact. And I'm just gonna slice all of these at one time, and then I will rinse out the seeds. As always, when working with jalapenos, make sure to wash your hands very well afterwards or use gloves while you're touching them. The heat from these likes to stick around for quite a while, and even though you think it may have gone away, it likes to remind you that it's still on your hands. All right, I'm gonna rinse these and I'll be right back. To assemble these, you just want to take about, I don't know, depending on how big your jalapenos are, maybe a tablespoon of your cheese mixture. Generously stuff it into the center. And because, again, I'm only using a portion of this cheese because I'm using it for 3 different dishes, I'm only gonna be making a few, but you probably want to, I would say, again, 3, 4, maybe even 5 per person. These are super delicious. So I'm just gonna fill all of these up, put them in my dish, and then I will add my bacon to the top. Once you have them all stuffed, go ahead and add your shiitake bacon to the top, and I'm just running these lengthwise down the center. You could use fresh shiitake. Again, the recipe for these came from the new Lauren Toyota cookbook. So if you want to know how to make these, you should buy it. And that's it. Those are ready to go in the oven. The tart has been in the oven for 15 minutes and it is ready to come out. Beautiful. Brown around the top, or brown around the edges. The asparagus itself is starting to cook and soften up a bit. Beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and put the jalapeno poppers in right now too. These are gonna go in for probably about 10 to 15 minutes. Also, I'm gonna turn it down to 375 though. Actually, I'm gonna move my pizza stone so I don't set this on top of that. The poppers have been in the oven 20 minutes. I could let them go a little bit longer to get a little bit more brown, to let the shiitake bacon crisp up a little bit more, but I'm too excited, so I'm taking them out now at 20 minutes. They smell amazing. There we go. Of course, because it's not cheese, it's not really gonna bubble. It's more of like a cream cheese texture, but the flavors are spot on and it's incredible. So let's go ahead and dig in. The tart I'm going to cut up. See, the asparagus has still got quite a bit of texture to it. I'm going to cut this into 9 squares, and that is easy for your guests to pick up. Again, if you were to make the whole recipe of the cream cheese and use it to make the tarts, it would definitely make 2 of these, which I would strongly recommend. I've gone ahead and plated up our final products here, just as any guest would at our brunch. We have our tart here with asparagus and our cashew cream cheese. We have our grape truffles with cream cheese and our pistachio crust. And finally, we have our jalapeno poppers with shiitake bacon. It's cool to think that all 3 of these dishes can be made with the simple base of a cashew cream cheese. It does take a little bit of preparation, the fact that you need to make it the day or the night before, but it's definitely worth it. And again, if you're gonna be making any of these for a party, I would definitely recommend making probably a batch of that cashew cream cheese for each of them. That way you can get probably about 20 or so jalapeno poppers, 2 full tarts, and I don't know how many of these truffles you're gonna get because you use quite a limited amount, only about a teaspoon or a tablespoon of that cashew cream cheese, but you'll be able to get a ton of these out of that batch. And trust me, your guests will be eating a ton of these. terms of the shiitake bacon, again, I got that recipe out of this cookbook here, Lauren Toyota's new cookbook. I used dry shiitake mushrooms instead of fresh, so I had to add a little bit of water to her regular recipe, but it turned out perfectly. They're not super crisp. I guess I could have cooked them in the oven ahead of time, got them a little bit more crispy, but I kind of like the chewiness with the rest of the textures of these dishes. It took me a while to think about what I wanted to make this week. Originally, I was going to do some very processed ramen with Takis kind of dish. It ended up failing, but I had a really inspiring dinner the other night at a restaurant in San Diego called Donna Jean, and the chef there made all of his own cheeses. Everything was from scratch, and it was just really inspiring to see him use fresh ingredients to make some incredible dishes that were really kind of profound. So that really inspired me today as well. I hope you're inspired to make these dishes. All three of them are incredible. If you do, take pictures, tag me on Instagram at monsonmadethis. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Again, I'm really close to 1,000 subscribers. It's a huge milestone for me, so please do hit that subscribe button. Make these dishes, enjoy them. I'm gonna sit here and finish off this plate. You have a great week, and I will see you next week with another recipe video. All right, see y'all later.